Hi, I'm Joe Carraro. It was some years ago that I met with Ronald Reagan, who at the time was considering running for president. It was at the Hotel Utah in Salt Lake City. Lynn Nofsinger had called and asked if I could attend a meeting that would include a couple of small business people from each western state to discuss the economy and the needs of small business. As we sat around the conference table, I realized that I was the only true small businessman in the room according to my definitions. There was a trucking company owner who had 500 employees and 200 trucks, a guy who owned storage facilities around the Southwest, a woman who owned a chain of beauty supply stores in a few states, and on and went around the table with me owning a small Italian restaurant on an alleyway in Albuquerque that at the point just made pizza and lasagna, had 5 employees. Just a few years before, I was the only employee. The reason I was invited was because I had stopped in Governor Reagan's office in LA to sign a petition encouraging him to run for president on a quick trip I made to visit relatives in California who just loved him as governor. His secretary was kind enough to ask me why I was supporting his effort, and I explained that as a former stockbroker who understood big business and now a small business owner, I was concerned that those running our country seemed more concerned with big business. And the hope of a growing economy would lie with the success of a capitalism that could only be provided by the expansion of small businesses in our country. That must have struck a chord with someone in the Reagan camp, because somehow a guy that sold pizza slices made the list. Then the former governor and future president went around the table discussing issues and recommendations with what I would consider apparent confusion about the role of government in a capitalist economy. I explained to Governor Reagan that when I was a stockbroker, I remembered a company that had lost $30 million and its stock dropped 20 points. The next year they lost $10 million and the stock rose 10 points. I had viewed the company losing $40 million in 2 years. The investing public viewed it as an improvement of $20 million. True small businesses don't have that luxury. If they lose $1, they're out of business. And yet the tax breaks and loopholes and incentives seem to favor big business. It's just another advantage that they have over competing smaller operations. They can undercut with predatory pricing, use saturated marketing, and spend and lose as much money as they want to drive a small business out of business. I also mentioned how the joining together of big business and government on so many levels was redefining what capitalism was in our country. It seemed to be approaching a hybrid where the natural tendency of socialism in government would morph with a capitalism that used to be defined by having the means of production privately owned with little government interference, and then this private industry would fund federal programs. And private enterprise would contribute then to the economy of our country by creating more private jobs. Of course, if the powers that be decide to grow government and compete with private industry for jobs, then the system will eventually defeat itself, with the government eventually creating more debt than the private sector can create wealth. And aggravating those competing interests could be ominous in the future, and that would be if the federal government became even more protecting and subsidizing of big business at the peril of those in small business. And here we are today. When the governor asked what people like me expected from government, I said, trust. He said that if I'm elected, I know you'll be able to say that at least you trusted me. As a true small businessman, I supported his efforts to become president. He suggested that with my ideals, ideas, and commitments, I should run for office, which I did. I learned what it took for him to get my support and gain the people's trust, and never lost a general election. Of course, being an advocate for small business and opposing the joining together of big business with government and political interests, I was never able to win a primary for higher office, but I guess that's politics. But is it just me, or does it really seem that since Reagan left, that all these powers joined together to take away control of our country from the people? It sure would be nice to be able to trust government again. Well, thanks for listening to An Average Joe.